Researchers analyzed blood samples from 48 children and 70 adults in Melbourne, Australia. The researchers found that compared to adults, kids exposed to the virus generated infection-fighting immune cells that quickly migrated to the infection site, clearing the virus before it had a chance to take hold.
If the world ended tonight, the people most likely to live long enough to rebuild it are probably not you or me. They're your kids. Title on screen: Why Children Survive the Apocalypse Better Than Adults. The science is terrifying. Imagine this. It's 3 weeks after a total blackout. No power, no phones, grocery stores gutted, gas stations empty. Adults are collapsing from exhaustion, stress, and hunger. And a group of kids is still moving, still adapting, still surviving. Sounds like a creepy sci-fi movie, right? But the scary part is, biology and psychology actually give kids some real advantages in extreme survival situations. And when you stack the science, it starts to look like the apocalypse might secretly be a kid's game. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might seriously rethink who you want on your survival team. Segment 1. The Tiny Body Advantage. Let's start with something brutally simple: energy. In any apocalypse scenario, food is the first big boss. In the US today, an average adult might burn around 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day just to function at a normal level. Kids, especially younger ones, often need far fewer total calories because they're smaller, even though they burn more per pound of body weight. Think about that in survival terms. If you and your 8-year-old are both trying to live off canned beans, the same stash will last that kid significantly longer than it will last you. You're basically a gas-guzzling pickup truck. The kid is a compact hybrid. For example, a child between about 2 and 3 years of age might need roughly 1,000 to 1,400 calories a day. That's less than a typical adult lunch and dinner combined in modern America. In a world where calories are everything, that smaller body becomes a built-in efficiency mode. So, in a famine-level disaster, who's more likely to hold out longer on the same amount of food? The 200-pound adult or the 60-pound kid? Biologically, the odds are not in the adult's favor. And it doesn't stop at food. Hydration plays the same game. Children still need water, obviously, but absolute volume is lower. A gallon of water that keeps an adult going for a day might stretch further for a child simply because their body mass and total fluid needs are smaller overall. On top of that, kids are still growing. Their bodies are experts at doing more with less when resources fluctuate. In nutrition science, there's evidence that children can sometimes bounce back from periods of limited calories with intense catch-up growth when food becomes available again. Adults don't get that kind of rebound. Once you're done growing, the system is a lot less flexible. That means if there's a harsh stretch followed by a brief window of better resources, kids are biologically better positioned to recover, regain strength, and keep going. Segment 2. Flexible brains in a broken world. Now let's talk brains. One of the most terrifying truths for adults is this: kids' brains are still wiring themselves. That sounds like a vulnerability. But in a shattered world, it can become a survival weapon. Children's brains are insanely plastic. They adapt to new rules, environments, and norms much faster than adult brains do. In disasters, researchers look at something called resilience, the ability to adapt successfully to threats and keep functioning. For kids, resilience doesn't just live inside their heads. It's a whole system involving family, community, and how they interpret danger. In multi-hazard environments, places hit by repeated disasters, studies point out that kids' psychological resilience is shaped by their mental health, attitude, and awareness. Translation: kids who are given even minimal support and a sense of safety can psychologically stabilize faster than many adults, even after major shocks. Here's the creepy part. While adults are stuck thinking, the world used to be normal, this is wrong, kids can quickly shift to, okay, this is just how life is now. How do I play this new game? That mindset matters. Adults carry a heavy mental load: mortgage, job, lost normal life, guilt, long memories of how easy things used to be. That mental comparison drains emotional energy. Kids don't have decades of before times to mourn. Once the initial shock passes, their new normal becomes whatever environment they grow up in. Think about kids who grow up in war zones or disaster-prone regions. A lot of them, with support, build routines around chaos. They still play, learn, joke, and form friendships, even as adults around them crumble. That doesn't mean they're untouched by trauma, but it does mean their brains are wired to keep functioning in ways many adults can't. And in an apocalypse, functioning is survival. Segment 3. Emotion, fragile, or bulletproof. Now let's hit something that feels counterintuitive. Emotional resilience. You might assume kids are more emotionally fragile in disasters, and in many ways, they are highly vulnerable. But here's the twist. When the right support exists, children can show shockingly strong adaptation compared to adults. Research on kids in disasters shows that key things like social support, feeling protected, and having even a small sense of control over their daily lives massively boost their resilience. If they have a caring adult, a stable group, or even clear routines, they're more likely to mentally adjust and keep going. So imagine a post-apocalypse camp. Adults are spiraling, but the kids? They're forming little groups, assigning roles, turning survival into a kind of mission. That's not fantasy. It's how children already cope in some real-world disaster zones. Kids also often have stronger belief in authority figures. If they trust the adult or older teen leading them, they're more likely to follow survival instructions without overthinking or arguing. Adults, on the other hand, second-guess, debate, freeze in decision paralysis, or sabotage plans because of fear and ego. That's the terrifying science. Emotional simplicity can sometimes be an advantage. Also, children's sense of time is different. Adults may despair because they can imagine 10 ruined years ahead. Kids think in days, hours, moments. If today there's food and a game and people they care about, that can be enough to keep their will to live intact. In a world where mental collapse is as deadly as any virus or monster, that ability to emotionally stabilize around a new routine is a brutal superpower. Segment 4. The physics of being small. Let's go back to the physical world for a second, because size matters. In survival situations, being small is not always a disadvantage. Kids are lighter, more agile, and able to squeeze into spaces adults simply can't. If you need to crawl through collapsed structures, climb through narrow gaps, or stash yourself in tight hiding spots, a 60-pound child has options a 200-pound adult does not. Rescue and trauma data show something else interesting. When severely injured children are treated at pediatric trauma centers in the US, their odds of survival can be significantly better compared to those treated at adult trauma centers. One meta-analysis found that children in pediatric trauma centers had around 40% lower odds of mortality than those in adult centers. Although the exact numbers vary and the certainty of evidence is low, even with limitations, that suggests that, in the right system, kids' bodies are surprisingly good at surviving injuries. So now factor that into an apocalypse where formal systems break down. If children can already bounce back better from physical trauma when supported, what happens when they're the ones taking fewer risks, moving quieter, and staying out of direct conflict? Children are also less likely to be direct targets in certain threats. Predatory humans, armed groups, or desperate looters often focus on adults, the ones with resources, weapons, or perceived power. Kids might be overlooked, written off as non-threats, or used as lookouts or runners. In pure survival terms, not being taken seriously can keep you alive. And here's another uncomfortable piece. Kids simply weigh less. In situations like crossing weak structures, thin ice, unstable debris, or makeshift bridges, a lighter body is less likely to trigger collapse. The environment itself is more forgiving to them. Segment 5. The social network effect. Survival isn't just biology, it's social. In disasters, A massive determinant of how well kids cope is the resilience of the systems around them: family, school, community. When those systems adapt, children adapt with them. But in a full-on apocalypse, at some point, adults start dying in larger numbers, leaving clusters of kids behind. Here's where it gets eerie. Kids are natural tribe builders. On playgrounds across America, children instinctively form groups, create rules, assign roles, and enforce fairness without anyone teaching them formal politics. Now picture that same instinct unleashed in a survival context. You get small, tightly bonded, highly cooperative units. If adults build hierarchies, kids build packs. These packs can be extremely efficient. One kid scouts, one guards supplies, one remembers routes, one negotiates with adults. And unlike adults, kids are less hung up on status and more focused on immediate needs: food, safety, belonging. Resilience researchers talk about children's multi-system environment, where family, school, peers, and policies all interact to support or harm adaptation. In an apocalypse, formal systems fall, but peer systems remain. Kids still seek each other out. They still build their own mini-societies. Those mini-societies might be ruthless, but they're effective. A group of children that sticks together, shares resources, and avoids risky confrontations could outlast scattered, isolated adults who refuse to cooperate or trust each other. And there's another advantage. Adults often feel a deep instinct to protect children, even in crisis. That means kids can sometimes access help, shelter, or resources from strangers in ways other adults cannot. In a scarcity-driven world, being perceived as worth saving is a life asset. Share this video with that one friend who's way too into doomsday prepping, and subscribe for more deep dives into the dark what-ifs of our future. Because in the next video, we're asking an even scarier question. What if the first true post-apocalyptic civilization isn't built by adults at all? You don't want to miss that.